that have already established industrial foundations across every province of our country, have they been mentioned earlier this morning. From Kucha, the largest SEZ on the African continent, spanning more than logistics and agro-processing. And to East London Industrial Development Zone, a UNIDO-recognized eco-industrial park that is setting the benchmark for green industrialization, automotive components, and sustainable manufacturing. Together, these strategic industrial platforms demonstrate that the foundations for accelerated industrial growth are already in place. Our task is to strengthen their performance, deepen their integration into regional and global value chains, and ensure that they become powerful engines of investment and inclusive economic development. But we must go further. The new Spatial Industrial Development Strategy demands that we reference every new zone against 6 layers. First one, infrastructure corridors, ports, rail, and energy. No zone can strive in isolation. Second, resource endowment. From the Bushveld Platinum Group metals to our agricultural belts. The third, existing industrial parks. Isithebe, Ezakheni, Babelegi. We must revitalize them and plug them into SEZ value chains. The district development model, the DDM. Every district must identify its competitive advantage. Fifth, socioeconomic data. Zones must be located where jobs are needed most. And 6, community integration. A zone is not successful if the township next door sees no benefits. As the speakers before me said earlier, we need to take everybody with us. Nobody must be left behind, including those in the townships. Program Director, this is spatial referencing not as a technical exercise, but as a tool for both spatial and economic justice. I should also make it clear that as government, we are not planning for the next election cycle. We are planning for the next generation. In this regard, Cabinet has endorsed a 20-year SEZ development framework with formal evaluations that will take place every 5 years. The first years, from 0 to 5, it will be baseline and discipline. We will map, audit, and set KPIs for every zone. Investments, jobs, exports, and SMME linkages. No more vanity projects. First 5-year evaluation, we will ask challenging questions. Did this zone generate new impact and investments, or did it simply relocate existing investments? Did it create jobs? If a zone scores below 60 on our scorecard, we will trigger the 5-year intervention framework that Minister Tau has announced. We will restructure, repurpose, or de-designate if necessary. The 5th to 15 years will be consolidation and expansion. We will deepen clusters, automotive in Kucha and East London, PGMs in Limpopo, and marines in Saldanha. We will sign SEZ pacts so that national government, provincial government, and district municipalities deliver incentives in unison. And then, of course, 15 to 20 years, we want by 2046, we should have fully integrated our SEZs into global value chains and their local communities. A young person in Mthatha should be able to envision a career path that starts at the TVET college, progress to an SME supplier, moves to a factory floor in East London, IDZ, and ultimately leads to an export market. Honorable guests, investors tell us that they want certainty. This certainty is provided through, amongst others, the 3-sphere incentive package. Nationally, we offer the 15% corporate tax rate for qualifying SEZ companies and the Section 121 manufacturing allowance of up to 900 million rands, VAT and customs relief in our custom control areas, and the employment tax incentives for the youth. Provincially, our entities such as Kucha Development Corporation and also the other IDZs provide subsidized land, world-class infrastructure, as they alluded to earlier, but also bespoke skills programs. At the district level, our municipalities commit through service level agreements to fast-track zoning, provide bulk services, and ensure 30% procurement from local SMMEs within a 5-kilometer radius. However, incentives are not entitlements. They are part of a compact. In return, we expect investments, we expect jobs, we expect to produce for exports, but more broadly, transformation. Ladies and gentlemen, we have more than 5,000 SEZs globally competing for the same capital that we want. We cannot compete simply by being the cheapest. We compete by being the most strategic, the most reliable, and the most inclusive. To our SEZ CEOs, your performance will be measured every 5 years, not only on glossy brochures, but on actual jobs and what you have produced for exports. To our mayors, an SEZ cannot function if there is no water, no electricity, or no road that leads to the factory gate. The district development model must assist us to actively implement the district development model to ensure integrated development plans. To our investors, South Africa is open for business, but we are not open for extraction. We want you to beneficiate here at home. We want you to train here in our country. We want you to partner with enterprises and SMMEs here in our country. To our communities, these special economic zones are yours. Hold us accountable. The girl child in Mdantsane must see the East London IDZ as a promising future for her and generations to come. The artisan in Musina must see the SEZ as a market and, most importantly, a door to global markets. Ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude, let me leave you with the guiding vision of South Africa's industrial policy. It says the following: industrialization to create employment and rising incomes. Transformation to build an inclusive economy and a capable state to drive effective implementation. That is a mandate before us. As we leave Durban this evening, let us renew our collective commitment to ensure that our special economic zones become engines of investment, innovation opportunity, not islands of prosperity, but catalysts for inclusive growth that will uplift every province and every community across our country. Thank you very much. Aken Sainko.
Clear, coherent, unwavering. Thank you very much to you, Deputy President Paul Mashatile. As you spoke, Mr. Deputy President, I was reminded of two famous proverbs, one Asian, one African. The Asian proverb says, we plant today the trees that will provide shade for future generations. It's legacy building. And when you said we are not planning for an election cycle, we're planning for the future we envisage for South Africa, that really came through quite coherently. Also, as you spoke, I was reminded of the African proverb that says, if you want to go alone, go fast. If you want to go far, go with others. And partnership matters. And so you spoke about delivering in unison across the different spheres of government, and make sure that whatever you do, you think about the added benefits, the multiplier effect for local communities and jobs in those local communities, with those powerful words, not extraction, but beneficiation, mutual development. And thank you also, Mr. Deputy President, for reminding us, as you echoed the words of the late President Nelson Mandela on the eve of his birthday tomorrow, that lifting all people out of poverty is an act of justice. Lifting people out of poverty is an act of justice. And so we have that really as a poignant reminder of why we're here. It's investments, yes. It's industrialization, yes. It's growth, yes. It's developing local value chains, yes. It's adding more local producers onto supply chains, yes. It's showing what made in Africa goods look like to be appreciated by a market globally, yes. It's creating new markets on the African continent, yes. But ultimately, it's the act of justice, of bringing a continent into its fullest potential. And as you spoke, I also was reminded of the fact that we are talking about SEZ investments in South Africa, but for the broader region. As we speak right now, there is a broad African vision, Agenda 2063. The continent is not stagnant, and we're in the second decade of the implementation phase of some of the key tenets of Agenda 2063, of which regional integration is a core pillar of one of the 7 tenets. What we've seen since the adoption of Agenda 2063 is in 2018, the AfCFTA was ratified, the African Continental Free Trade Area. That treaty has now been adopted by 50 African states as we speak. And through the assisted trade program, we saw just last year alone $200 billion of trade moving through the African continent. So something is happening across Africa. But as we speak here today, we're reminding you that South Africa, with its capabilities, seen in the automotive assembly lines, the very best in the Southern Hemisphere, gas storage facilities, marine engineering services, high volume mineral exports from a country that has no less than highest reserves in 7 of the critical minerals required for industrial and tech growth in the world. Vast agro-processing. That with the opportunities opening up across the African continent, this country is poised to be a gateway into these frontier markets, has capacity industrially, has policy supporting it, and has SEZs that can be a catalyst. And so with those words, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce to you the first of our facilitated discussions. Why invest in SEZs now? This is an investor perspective on the conversation. The panelists are Ms. Phumzile Langeni, Non-Executive Director of DP World, Mr. Neil Hill, President of Ford Africa for the Ford Motor Company, Dr. Stavros Nicolaou, Senior Executive for Strategic Trade at Aspen Pharmacare, Mr. Corey Kotsa, the CEO and co-founder of the AIH Group, Mr. Donovan Chimandamba, the President and CEO of Nyanza Light Metals, Pty Ltd, Mr. Andrew Masiwa, the Director for Client Relations in Southern Africa, and we're joined by the MEC for Economic Development in Gauteng, Vuyiswa Ramokgopa, who will moderate this conversation. So may all of our panelists make their way to the stage, and could our moderator take charge of the stage?
Thank you, Program Director. I'm feeling quite fortunate today because I get to sit on the other side of the panel today as the moderator, and I'm not the one who's in the hot seat today. But I'm looking forward to a very good discussion, a very robust discussion, and I welcome all the panelists here today. His Excellency, Deputy President of the Republic of South Africa, Mr. Paul Mashatile, the Honorable Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, Mr. Parks Dow, and all dignitaries and delegates present today. My name is Vuyiswa Ramokgopa. I'm the MEC for Economic Development, Agriculture and Rural Development in Gauteng. which incidentally is home to also two of the SEZs, the Tshwane SEZ, the OR Tambo SEZ, and the soon-to-be designated Vaal SEZ. So today I am here with some of the investors who are invested in our province, but also in many of the other SEZs all over the country. Now the topic today and the theme that we gather under on this panel is to talk about why, to get a better understanding of why you as companies, as investors from the private sector, have chosen to invest in SEZs. It is really to understand what the proposition is around an SEZ for those who may not know. Now we know that South Africa offers a compelling offer. We have heard reference to the reduced corporate income tax rates, the customs controlled areas, as well as some of the VAT relief and the support that is given to investee companies. But those incentives and incentives in general cannot just exist on paper. We want to talk about what happens in the real world. What we're going to test today is whether that proposition really remains competitive and whether yourselves as companies are indeed leveraging the benefits from the SEZs as we imagine them to be. Now, my panelists have been briefly introduced, but just to guide us, we really want to achieve three things in today's discussion. Now, first, we want to talk about what's working. What's working for you in your particular individual spaces. Second, we want to have an honest account about the regulatory and operational areas that perhaps need attention. You have the ears of all of the relevant people in the room today, MECs from all provinces and senior leaders of government. This is an opportunity to share what are some of the challenges that may be experienced and how do we then overcome them. And third, it's really about developing jointly a practical roadmap and steps that we can take that will assist us and assist those who are in the early stages of SEZs to better refine the offering in their respective provinces. So, Sis Phumzile, I'm going to use my power today and start with you as the rose amongst the thorns. And I'm going to allow you actually and request that you maybe, let's start zoomed out a bit. You are from DP World, which is a global logistics giant, and you've been invested in South Africa for some time. Why have you invested? Why SEZs, and what is the value proposition for your company?
Sure. Thank you very much, MEC, and to the DTIC and the city of my birth, eThekwini. It is wonderful to be back, and thank you for the invitation. We are in a fortunate position as DP World. We are the 5th largest global port terminal logistics operator that offers end-to-end services to countries across the globe. I think you see us in more places than not, and I have no doubt it's value-added manufacturing capability. If I look at the depth of our capital markets, the depth of our institutions, our judicial system, I mean, South Africa ranks as a shining example of what transformation and change can do. That said, we do have our own housekeeping issues, which to a large extent have also bedeviled our development and growth. A lot of that is being illuminated at the Madlanga Commission and various other forums. But I would say why we invest is because we believe South Africa has got talent, South Africa has got a robust economy, and South Africa has got the backbone of creating a very sustainable future that we have seen over the last 30 plus years. And why SEZ in particular? We are a little bit late to the party as recent investors in the Nkomazi SEZ. Thus far, we've signed a lease, but we see in Nkomazi what we have been able to see in Jebel Ali, which is probably my point of reference. And our approach to SEZ is that SEZs provide an ecosystem. And SEZ is not an industrial park in isolation. And SEZ has been seen as mentioned by the Deputy President, the Minister, and the Mayor, to have an impact not only on society, not only on the economy, but also on the communities that are around it. We see it as a catalyst to development, especially on the logistics side, because the key element in any successful economy, which you also find in an SEZ,
of the experiences that you've gleaned from your time there.
Well, Madam MEC, thank you very much for the question. I wish to acknowledge the Deputy President and Minister Tao. Thank you very much. I think from an SEZ perspective, and as you rightly point out, we haven't always been in an SEZ. But when it came to our most recent program that we announced, which of course was the Next Generation Ranger, which came to market in 2023, we looked at what it would take to be globally competitive and how we could benefit and support APDP2 and SAM 2035 in terms of the automotive master plan. And that was to be a high volume plant that was not only supporting the domestic market, but also exporting. And key to the success of that was making sure we had suppliers that were in close proximity to the factory, not only because of the fact that it helps in terms of shortening value chains, it reduces inventory levels, and it supports our just-in-time process, but it also has a quality aspect to it as well, which allows us to course correct very quickly in terms of where we see adjustments needing to happen. The reason why that is so critical is that we're fully integrated into Ford's global economics or ecosystem in terms of supplying vehicles across the world, I should say. We export to more than 100 countries from South Africa. So in order to be competitive, we have to be competitive from a cost perspective, from a quality perspective, and having our suppliers, and that was a very, very ambitious plan that we launched, and we had tremendous support from all three tiers of government to make it happen in record time and to meet the production thresholds that we needed to. It came together very, very quickly, but high quality, speed of reaction, and also efficiency is so critical. The critical thing why that matters is because South Africa, from the automotive sector perspective, when we are competing for investment decisions, I'm not competing against Toyota or VW or Isuzu. I'm competing against other plants that make Ford vehicles around the world. And as South Africa Incorporated, as I like to call it, if our value chain, our whole ecosystem is not efficient, cost competitive, that capital, that foreign direct investment goes elsewhere. So that is why using an SEZ was so critical for us in terms of making sure that we were cost competitive, that we were efficient, and that we need to really leverage everything possible. I think I can touch on later some of the things that we are seeing challenges on, but those were the reasons why we really wanted to be a part of that, is to be able to leverage the advantages, be competitive, and support South Africa as being fully integrated into the global ecosystem.
Thank you for that. I want to come to you, Donovan. I want to talk about, last night we celebrated the SEZ Awards, and there was one particular investment that was hailed as one of the bigger, more exciting developments that has taken place recently. And that is an investment made by your company. Now, I want to talk a bit about that. What difference has it made for you being located in the RBIDZ, and how has that assisted you to getting to where you are right now? And I think just talk a bit also perhaps about that particular investment that you've made, and how the SEZ has essentially enabled that.
Thank you, MEC, and greetings to the Deputy President and Honorable Paxtel. I think maybe where I want to start is to start by saying that South Africa is. I want to start in terms of how we came into deciding to be in Richards Bay, or South Africa at large as well. South Africa remains with one of the most compelling industrial destinations on Africa. The reasons for that is that we are well endowed in mineral resources. We have a very deep industrial capacity and engineering expertise. I think most of that emanates from or comes from the days, the industrialization between the 1950s to the 1980s. where you saw the SASOLs, the GenRefs, the SUPREFs, where you saw the ISCO metals. That led to quite a deep industrial capability that South Africa has, even at an engineering expertise level. We also have, in South Africa, you have very sophisticated capital markets. You have the financial markets also coupled with the high-performing stock exchange on the continent. And also, most importantly, is that you have access to the African and the global markets through, being at the ports and world-class infrastructure. So when you put all of those things together, they start to give you an idea of the natural competitiveness that South Africa has. Now, I think coming back to the conversation is changing. We've just entered a new era, a new industrial era, an era which is driven by transformative forces. I think there are two transformative forces that we're seeing globally. That's your artificial intelligence and your electrification or just energy transition. Now, when you look at those two transformative forces, they demand or require a lot of infrastructure. They need a lot of critical minerals. They need advanced materials. They need manufacturing capability. So, and when we look at AI infrastructure, I know everybody thinks about digitalization, it's AI data, all of that. But before a data center becomes a data center, it starts from the mine, it goes into refineries, and then it goes into manufacturing capability. So there's a lot of minerals that go into the value chains that underpin AI infrastructure, that also underpin the energy transition. Now, as Nyanza, we saw a generational opportunity, which says that there's an opportunity because Africa for the last many decades, in fact, for many decades, has been exporting raw minerals with very little value addition. Specifically, when you look at Nyanza, what we targeted is heavy mineral sands. We know we have South Africa probably has the world's second largest reserves when it comes to titanium dioxide, which is found in the ilmenites mined by the likes of Richards Bay Minerals, mined by the likes of Tronox in Mozambique. You would find that there's Kenmare, and it goes on across the coast into the rest of the continent. But all of this is exported at low values of $300 a ton. And then we re-import back the final product at $3,000 a ton, which goes into the manufacturing of paints, plastics, industrial coatings, inks, almost in everything that we touch every day. But again, we've exported at $300 a ton. We re-imported $3,000 a ton. We've just not only lost value, but we also exported the quality jobs that would come with that. So when you come back to us, we said we're going to build that industrial capacity, that mineral beneficiation operation. We commenced with the construction of that 2 months ago in the Richards Bay. It's of significant scale. It's $870 million. We normally use, to give you the idea of the scale, we normally use the number of football pitches. It's equivalent to 97 football pitches, 97 football stadiums. That's the kind of scale when you look at the kind of beneficiation that we need to start to bring onto the continent. Coming back to the SEZs specifically, when you look at what we need is infrastructure concentration. We cannot be trying to put these industrial capacities starting from basics by putting together infrastructure. You also have regulatory support when you're in the SEZs. You have logistics, you've got access to ports and markets and supply chain ecosystems. So those are some of the things that from a Nyanza perspective has driven us to go into the special economic zones. And there's a lot more that I'll touch on as we get into the conversation.
Thank you for that. And I think that already directly responds to the call that the Deputy President made to say we should not just be a destination for extraction, but for value addition and beneficiation. And really, it's encouraging to hear that we are now retaining a lot more of that value. We're actually onshoring some of those jobs, and we are building that industrial base that enables us to participate at that level of the value chain. Two of the speakers have spoken about the importance of capital markets and mentioned that. And I want to come to you, Andrew, as the money man around the table, and just get a better understanding of the value proposition of an SEZ and of a company that is invested in an SEZ from a perspective of a funding institution. Now, specifically from your perspective as a Frexim Bank, are there any particular funding concessions that a Frexim Bank has committed to in the context of SEZ tenants or companies? And is there a special dispensation for companies that are invested in SEZ? Or how do you then look at them as funding institutions?
Madam MEC, thank you for that question. But let me start by just expressing our profound gratitude to the President of the country, the Vice President, and Honorable Minister for the support that we are receiving as Afrexim Bank in South Africa. And on the point about the interventions that we see that can be provided to the special economic zones in South Africa, I want to go back to just 5 months in time when South Africa made a very critical decision to become a member state of Afrexim Bank. And this was made possible with the efforts that were led by the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition. And as a result of this membership that South Africa has made into Afrexim Bank, we also see it befitting to announce a $14 billion country program for South Africa. Within this country program, we have got components that include a $3 billion Afrexim Bank inclusive support development program for South Africa, which is targeted to the Black economic players who would like to be also involved in the economic emancipation of the country, as well as diversification of resources within the country. Now, one could say these packages, they are not for the SEZ specifically, but we cannot remove the discussion from the fact that when you have industrialization, this is how the resources of a country are amplified and the value and return provided back to economy. And so we want to advance the strategy of Afrexim Bank being led by industrialization. This is on record as part and parcel of the thrust of Afrexim Bank under its current leadership to industrialize Africa. Now, the specific forms of instruments that are available under the Afrexim Bank Inclusive Support Development Program includes project preparation funding. And to my right-hand side, we actually have got an existing client of Afrexim Bank in Nyanza Light Metals, who have received support under project preparation funding. And when a project moves to full bankability, we then also follow suit with providing project financing. And beyond project financing, we also play a critical role in our advisory services offering that has the effect of twinning and matchmaking the producers, the value-adding industry with markets across the borders. So these are interventions that are available, which I see as value-adding to the universe of support that any entrepreneur is able to access. The DTIZ in itself is heavily invested not only from a custodianship of the industrial policy, but we are also aware of their support in providing grants. The World Bank review report that has just been concluded in 2026 with the various pinpoints of areas of focus. And these are all part and parcel of the story that Afreximbank feels proud to be associated, and the story that Afreximbank want to rally behind with the programs that I've mentioned that the bank has promulgated. Thank you, MEC.
Thank you. And thank you, Minister Tao. We see you and your leadership. It is indeed great news that South Africa is now a member state of Afrexim, and that channel is now available to us. We'll talk a bit later about perhaps some of the ways in which you're collaborating or the potential to collaborate with other of our development finance institutions and local financing institutions. Stavros, let me come to you. And I know you are always a vocal champion and advocate for industrialization, and particularly you have strong views about what we need to do to, get the motor engine running. But I want to talk a bit about your investments in Kucha and what has informed that, and what specifically was the reason for your investment there. And maybe you can talk about, in particular, how does Aspen anticipate that its planned manufacturing plant will assist in closing the gap in terms of South Africa's vulnerabilities to global supply chains and all of the other global competitive factors that we are seeing. I mean, you're obviously exporting globally, and we'd like to get a sense from yourself of how you're experiencing your global position and competitiveness via your involvement at Kucha.
MEC, thanks very much. And you've gone from the money man to the drug man. Yeah. So the drug man's going to comment. But let me before I do that, let me also acknowledge with great thanks the invitation to be here today. I think this is a critically important engagement for the country and for the continent. Let me also acknowledge the leadership of our Deputy President and our Minister, and certainly all the other distinguished guests that are here, and particularly my business colleagues that are here as well. I'm going to do a little bit of prefacing just for 30 seconds before I get to the nub of your question, MEC. And like Pumzile, I think the starting point for me is why invest in South Africa in the first place. And you've heard many of the reasons. I'm going to not necessarily repeat them, but we are the most industrialized economy on the continent, the most diversified, extremely strong financial institutions, good governance, and an advanced manufacturing sector in certain sectors. But I think the most compelling reason is that South Africa still provides the best value proposition on the continent, given the demographic dividend that is going to ensue in the next decade or so. And investors take a long-term view. They don't come and invest, say, look, we're coming to invest because there's an opportunity next week. They take a long-term view. And if you are looking on the continent, how do I play in this demographic dividend of Africa, given that 1 in 4 people on the planet will be an African by 2050? South Africa provides, in my humble opinion, the most compelling investment case. So now that I've got that out the way, MEC, let me focus specifically on your question. We have spoken about some of the benefits of the continent, some of the deficits that can be turned into opportunity. One of those deficits is that we are saddled with, regrettably, the most disproportionate disease burden of any continent in the world. We have the worst of infectious diseases and the worst now, a rising tide of what we call non-communicable disease. This is diabetes, hypertension, cardiovascular disease, and others. And please, the two shall never meet, we hope. But it does provide an opportunity for those who are looking to invest in the pharmaceutical industry. Why? Because the African Union has been very clear, led by our own president, who championed this during COVID. We said that never again what happened during COVID shall be repeated, where Africa was at the back end of the queue when it came to vaccines, pharmaceuticals, other medical countermeasures. So we need to establish our own capacities, our own capabilities, our own expertise. Not easy to do when you're competing against heavily subsidized other geographies around the world, particularly Asia. And the playing fields are not level. So if you export out of many Asian jurisdictions, if you export pharmaceuticals, you're going to get significant tax holidays, accelerated depreciation schemes, subsidized land, water, electricity, and the list is endless. So what the SEZ offering provides for us, and this is why we went for it as Aspen, it provides two things. It allows us to still be invested in Africa because we do want to participate in that demographic dividend. We do want to push back the frontiers of healthcare challenges that the continent is experiencing. And lastly, we also want a level playing field, or to a degree a level playing field. And the SEZ offering is exactly that. You yourself, MEC, before you started, cited some of the benefits. I'm not going to rehash those, but I think we looked at this very much from the vantage point of we're African. We see great growth prospects in Africa and beyond. We see South Africa and back South Africa as an export destination. There's one area, whilst the DP is here, that I do want to address on that. But it also gives you, if you participate in it, SEZ, some type of leveling effect against your competing geographies. So like Neil said, very often you're not competing against companies, you're competing against geographies that are significantly more attractive. And I don't have to remind anyone, this audience, capital is agnostic. It follows where it's going to get the most stable, predictable environment, and also where the returns are best. And I think we still offer a very compelling case here in South Africa. Lastly, you made a provocation at the beginning, MEC. You said, what is it that we need to do in addition? We haven't leveraged domestic volumes for export orientation in our country. And the single biggest missed opportunity, I believe, and thanks to Minister Tau, because he's looking at this now, I hope he gets the health minister to do the same. He knows what I mean. But what we are saying here is the single biggest missed opportunity is our inability to leverage public procurement to get economies of scale, volume throughputs, recoveries, and export orientation bears a direct link to the SEZ offering, and is one that is complementary and one that we need to work on very close alignment with. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much for that. And I appreciate your consistency. I remember when we were on a panel at the Gauteng Investment Conference, and I think you raised this issue about the need to leverage public procurement more effectively to drive economies of scale. And I think that's a point we really need to internalize and be able to have a way forward on. And I think, Spumzile, when I will come back to you, because there was a point that the conversation that's starting to be had about saying how can we also have more competitive offering, looking at other markets, recognizing that we don't operate in a vacuum. We're operating with other localities and other regions, but I'll come to that. I want to come to you, Corey, and I think you give us a good perspective, because you your company, AIH, has investments and is participating in multiple SEZs. The Tshwane SEZ, as well as the Durban Trade Port, as far as I understand. Now, it would be interesting to also hear from your perspective what, and I don't want to draw comparisons, but I would want to get your reflection about, the offering and how you've experienced your time in both, and more importantly, what are the standout benefits that AIH has gained by being located within either both Durban or within TASIS? Thank you for that case study. It's certainly very helpful. Now, we are running a bit short of time, so we're going to do a very quick fire single response session. No ums and ahs, no opening statements. I want bullet points. What do we need to do to make our SEZs top of the chart? I hear you that they're world class, and we agree, but there's always room for improvement. And we are competing in a global economy. We are competing with other regions globally. How do we ensure that the South African SEZs and our SEZ model is on the top of the pile? And I want to get just 2, maximum 3 key points from each of you in 90 seconds each. We'll start with you, Neil.
All right. I think absolutely leveraging the scale that comes out of an SEZ is critical. We have to make sure that we're doing everything possible. In our world, we're facing the most incredible onslaught that we can possibly look at. We have to make sure that every single step of the value chain, both in terms of incoming and outgoing logistics, works. To give you an example, China exported 1.1 million vehicles in the month of June alone. That is double South Africa's entire production in a year. So we're facing an incredible onslaught. So that is why we have to be as efficient and as cost effective as possible. SEZs play a massive role in terms of shortening value chains and being cost effective and really leveraging the advantages that we have at home.
Thank you for that. Amazing. Thank you.
Hard to beat. So from my perspective, I'll say, firstly, there are many successes. Let's replicate those. Where we are falling short, I would suggest tighter timelines when it comes to interventions so that we can act and ensure that any negative experience is contained. The second one is leveraging our ports, aviation, and rail, because that is one of the key benefits of an ecosystem. Reducing friction in terms of governance, infrastructure, and regulation, and probably having read quite a bit ahead of today, some of the case studies from other countries, and probably one is considering an SEZ authority who would be the one point of contact to facilitate licensing approvals and assist companies so that instead of dealing with national, provincial governments, they're actually dealing with their one point of entry. Thank you.
Thank you. Very concise, very clear. Corey, what would you say? Thank you. Donovan.
Thank you. So I think I've got 2 points. The first one, I think the SEZs have done very well, and using the words property developers loosely. I think it's with all the infrastructure that they've put in, the bulk infrastructure, they have a massive opportunity now to take one step further and move to becoming utility operators. If you look at our project as an example, if we were in China, it would have cost half the price for us to, or half the peak funding would have been what we were looking for. Because now we have to start from a baseline where we have to put in water plants, steaming plants, and all of that. So what I would say the game changer is, number one, the SEZs need to move a step further and say, we now want to be utility operators so that we can come and focus on what we do. The second one is more around what we call maybe industrial clustering. So it's not about just inviting factories. that are not coordinated into these zones. The most competitive zones are zones where they attract value chains into a zone. So there must be some coherent strategy around. I think the Deputy President spoke about each zone must be referenced to something and create that comparative advantage. So attract value chains, not factories. So those are the 2 points that I'll leave with.
Thank you for that. Attract value chains, not factories. Very powerful. Andrew, let's hear from you.
So I think that we probably have got the infrastructure now more or less in place. The universe of SEZs that we have in South Africa is the largest in Africa, without an argument. So what we now need is to increase the tenancy. Let's increase the amount of investors, because a lot of them are not yet achieving the critical mass of investors that are expected. So that's number one. And perhaps still on number one, Afreximbank through RMB, IDC, DBSA, we are also happy to be looking at the funding requirements. And perhaps that universe can be included to the rest of South African banks. On its part, Afreximbank has been ranked the number one lead arranger in Africa for several years running, which speaks to our crowding in capacity of investment and funding into these kind of opportunities. Lastly, AFCFTA. I think before we are looking furthest ashore opportunities, I think there is scope to be increasing the amount of trade with the rest of Africa. Studies show regions that trade within themselves achieve the most development. Thank you.
Thank you. And Stavros, you have the last word.
Thanks. Three quick points. Number one, we need to continuously test the competitiveness of our offering, and we need to finesse and fine tune it. That's a colloquial way of me saying Treasury need to get more on board, to be frank. So if we need to look at export incentives to support the overall tax allowance benefit, then so be it, as long as it is fiscally neutral or accretive to the fiscus. Number two, we need to keep reducing red tape, administrative burden. No use attracting an investor and you roll out the red carpet and all the other agencies that you've got to deal with are anti-investment. So we've got to get alignment. And then the third thing is, as I said earlier, MEC, we need to fix our public procurement because, to Neil's point, scale is critical for any manufacturer. And if we're living in the world of, and I know this is what Minister Tar's advocating all the time, innovation, industrialization, and manufacturing, if you look at that complex, then the nexus to all of that is leveraging domestic volumes for global competitiveness. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. And thank you to all the panelists. I see the lights are flashing on us now. But without wanting to rehash all the great points that you've made, I think I just want to consolidate some of the key themes, certainly coming out of your recommendations. So it's clear for all of us what the mandate is. We've got to reduce red tape. We've got to make sure that investors who are looking to invest or have already made those commitments don't get stuck once they're already in the system and don't get frustrated out of the system. I quite like the one about not competing with each other. MECs of other provinces, I hope you are listening. Let us learn from each other. Let's collaborate with one another, but let's not compete with each other. And I think we take that to heart. Aligning of incentives is also key. And I think that point was very powerful, that we are dealing with one community of business people, of investors. And it's important that the experience of an SEZ, the incentives, whether it's in Kucha, whether it's in Tshwane, whether it's in Durban Trade Port, that they're able to leverage the same benefits. Competitiveness and driving competitiveness through scale becomes very key as well. So economies of scale. And we must build for the regional market and be able to compete, of course, in a global market. And I think one of the key ones is also, and this is something that perhaps wasn't explicitly mentioned, but the DP made the point and he said, let us not have SEZs that are simply islands of excellence. They must also be able to build inclusive economies and to benefit local economies in the region. So it's really about driving that, that local economic development and not simply focusing on SEZs as clusters of factories. And I think that's the point you were making about the ecosystems. You know, we are really talking about the broader industrialization ecosystem and not simply solving for individual factories. To my panelists, I thank you very much for your inputs. And to all of you, I thank you for giving us your time. We can formally adjourn the session. Thank you very much.